guys, Miss B here again. Now that I have a little bit more free time on my hands, or not really free time, I guess free time, but now that I have more time on my hands, I'll be able to record more of these videos. I told a few of you, but unfortunately my dad does have cancer. His cancer came back. He was in remission for a few years, and his cancer did unfortunately come back, and I have been taking him to chemo, which, if you guys don't know, is how you treat cancer, and he lives quite far away from me. So long story short, I was not really around that much these last 2 months because I was doing that, taking care of him and taking him to and from chemo. So yeah, now that he is done with his current rounds of chemo, I'll be able to do these more. So yay. All right. Let's talk about, I thought we were going to cover this in class. I looked back at my notes and we're not. We're covering it here. Okay, the Green Revolution. So what the heck is the Green Revolution? The Green Revolution is the shift in agriculture away from small family-operated farms to large industrial scale agribusinesses. Okay. So just like the Industrial Revolution really was the shift away from like human manufacturing and like cobblers, blacksmith to more machinery, the Green Revolution is the same thing. It is the shift away from family-owned farms into large-scale industrial agricultural businesses as machinery became more advanced. So because of this increased use of mechanization, genetically modified organisms, irrigation, fertilizers, and pesticides, we do now see a lot of positives and negatives. So, in this light green, the plus signs, these are positives, and the reds are negatives. So, positives to this, because there are positives to using machinery, is that it does increase the efficiency of lands, it has short-term profitability, and it does increase food supply, which would in turn decrease world hunger and increase Earth's carrying capacity for humans, which can also kind of be described as a negative if you want to take that side of it. But there's also negative consequences as well. Soil erosion, biodiversity loss, ground surface water contamination as well. Okay, so things with the plus sign and in green are positives. Things in red with the minus sign are negative. All right, mechanization. Increased use of tractors for plowing and tilling fields and combined for harvesting. What is going to increase your yield and your profits. Now, if you guys do not know what a yield is, it's how much you get at the end. So if I planted 1,000 seeds and I only yielded 800, that means that only 800 of my seeds, were able to grow and be ripe for harvesting. That is my yield, okay? And your profit is how much you make off of that yield. The higher the yield, the higher the profit, the more money you can make. If you're selling for, a potato is $1 per potato, which is really expensive. Let's say you only have a yield of 500, but the mechanized field has a yield of 3,000 potatoes, you're going to have a higher profit, okay? However, this does have an increased reliance on fossil fuels. Mechanized machinery does use gasoline and diesel. Burning these fossil fuels and extracting these fossil fuels is going to emit greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which results in global climate change. Oh, am I recording? Someone please tell me I'm recording. My tab is being recorded. Okay, good. I thought I wasn't being recorded for a second. Why isn't the thing popping up? Oh my gosh, I literally was so nervous for a second. Okay, all right. Let me go back. Okay, so heavy machinery also compacts soil, decreasing water, and makes topsoil more prone to erosion. Okay, high yield variety crops. Hybrid or genetically modified crops that produce a higher yield, which is again amount of crops produced per area, essentially how much you make at the end. okay? A hybrid is cross-pollinating different species or parent plants with ideal traits coming from two different species, okay? This kind of brings in stuff from genetics and biology. So a positive to this is increased yield with food stability in regions previously prone to famine like India, Pakistan, and Mexico. GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are crops with new genes spliced into their genome. Okay, genetic splicing is, I can't talk about it in a way that you guys would understand other than you broke a bracelet, and in order to fix your bracelet, you had to add in new beads that weren't there before to fix it. That's kind of what genetic splicing is. It's adding in genes into the DNA using restriction enzymes. It's not something that we're going to go in depth with how they're made, but we do have to know the impacts of GMOs on the environment and the economy. Okay. So again, GMOs, genetically modified crops, have genes for drought tolerance, pest resistance, faster growth, and larger fruit. Increased profitability with fewer plants lost to drought, disease, pests. Larger plant size is going to be a higher yield. So corn, this is the genetically modified one. This is one that is not genetically modified. And you can see some of it's been lost to disease. So BT corn has been modified with the gene from soil bacteria to produce a protein that kills many different pests. Okay. However, a downside is that GMO crops are all genetically identical. So genetic diversity is decreased, it's low, which means that we are more susceptible to disease or pests if we all have the same GMO crop in a field. Synthetic fertilizer. We should know some stuff about this from our previous units. Synthetic fertilizer is the shift from organic fertilizers like manure and compost. Manure is like poop. Compost is, decaying food, plant matter, that kind of stuff, to synthetic fertilizers, man-made from ammonium, nitrates, and phosphates. So positive, notice a trend. All of these positives are increased yield and profits. Negatives, we should know about eutrophication, algal blooms, hypoxia. We should know this stuff by now. If you don't, I recommend you take a pause and look more into eutrophication now. We've gone over it before, but if you are still stuck, just take a second and watch a 2-minute video on it, okay? Synthetic fertilizers require fossil fuels for production, again, releasing CO2 into the atmosphere, causing global warming, which is going to contribute to climate change. Irrigation. Okay, irrigation. We have a whole topic on irrigation. It's super fun. I can't wait to go over it with you guys. It's really the best thing ever. But what is irrigation? Drawing water from the ground or nearby surface waters and distributing it on fields to increase plant growth. This is the thing that kind of led to the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago, which led us to be an agrarian society, which is essentially how all society started in the Fertile Crescent and Mesopotamia. I hope you guys have learned about that before. If you haven't, the shift from hunter-gatherers to an agrarian society is really fascinating. And I'm an anthropology minor, so it was something I loved learning about in college. I recommend you all, again, watch a 10-minute video or find a TikTok that talks about it. It's really cool. But irrigation is one of those things that led us to be an agrarian society where we could stay put and farm and grow crops. And again, irrigation is when we use water from the ground or nearby surface waters to grow plants. It makes agriculture possible in parts of the world that are naturally too dry because they don't receive enough rain, like places like in Saudi Arabia. However, it can deplete groundwater sources, especially aquifers. Our next unit, Unit 6, is all about water, and we'll talk more about aquifers, but we get a majority of our fresh water from the ground. We should know that from Unit 3, and Our primary source of fresh water, again, is from the ground, which can be easily contaminated from those other things we just talked about. And irrigation does deplete or diminish our source of groundwater. Overwatering can drown roots, which leads to no oxygen access and cause soil salinization, increase salt levels in the soil. We have a whole lab about soil salinization, and you guys have to do a lab report on it, unfortunately. But it'll be good. Okay, pesticides. Pesticides increase in use of synthetic pesticides, which are chemicals sprayed on crops that kill weeds, insects, rodents, and other pests that eat or damage crops. Again, profits and yield. Those are the benefits. However, negatives can wash off the crops and runoff and kill or harm non-target species. Non-target just means we didn't mean to affect these things, but we did. Oops. Bees are especially prone to these pesticides. Remember, bees, they need the nectar from flowers. In turn, the bees get the pollen stuck to their butt and they go to another flower, they pollinate it, and that's how flowers reproduce, or at least some species of flowers reproduce. So if you have these pesticides killing bees, we're in some trouble. A really famous example is of DDT, which is a pesticide, not in my day, but like 60 years ago, which isn't too far away from my day, but 60 years ago, they would have DDT trucks and they would essentially just spray like DDT everywhere. I mean, like in neighborhoods, everywhere. And kids would ride their bike right behind the DDT truck and just sit in the spray. And it turns out that DDT thinned the shells of bird eggs, especially eagles. And how that happened was because birds eat insects and pests, and DDT is a pesticide which killed the bugs and the worms, and the birds would then eat the bugs and the worms with the DDT in them, and there was some kind of chemical reaction where their eggshells were thinned, so when they laid eggs and went to go sit on them, they cracked and the baby inside would not survive. And that led to a decrease in the eagle population, causing them to go on the endangered species list. Atrazine turns amphibians and fish intersect. This is something that I'm not too familiar with. I did learn a little bit about it in college, but yeah. All right, and that's all I have for you guys. I will see you all later, next class, sometime around. If you need anything, let me know. Bye.